you will pay for destroying me and our clan.
Gargoyles Season 1 Explored. Greg Weisman's famed animated series Gargoyles was a delightful gift for cartoon lovers with its complex storylines and villains. The show's narrative was unapologetically modern and refused to tone down, which added to the uniqueness. Today, we'll ring in the nostalgia with Season 1, but make sure to check out Seasons 2 and 3 that we'll explore subsequently on our channel. The adventures and misadventures of the creatures and their trusted detective friend Elisa Maza as they protect New York make for some fun episodes and a storyline that you wouldn't want to miss.
Face me, human, if you dare.
Reawakening, Part 1. It's a stormy night in New York, and something incredibly unnatural is happening on the top of a building obscured by clouds. Detective Elisa Maza of the 23rd Precinct enters the scene and narrowly escapes being crushed by stones with claw marks. We then cut away into the past, where in 994 AD Scotland, a castle called Wyvern is under siege by a band of Vikings, and the defense is failing. The castle's captain of the guard waits for nightfall as the foes climb onto the walls. As the last rays of the setting sun vanish, the stone gargoyles on the castle top come alive. The Viking leader Hakon still wields his sword to strike Goliath the gargoyle, but Goliath holds it as it cuts into his palm. This scene is important as it's the first time a Disney animated show has featured bleeding Goliath and his gargoyle clan overthrow the Vikings, who promise to return. As Goliath's partner Demona ties a bandage to his hands, the captain of the guard thanks Goliath. During a celebratory dinner that night, the captain of the guard invites Goliath and Demona to meet Princess Catherine. But while the other guards make fun of the captain, the princess and her advisor Magus chastise him for bringing the monsters to her. The captain remarks that Goliath is named after a biblical warrior, while the princess reminds him that Goliath was also a bully and savage. Demona is angered, but Goliath leaves with her while the captain apologizes to them. Demona insists that the cliffs were theirs before the human invasion, and Goliath pacifies her, reminding them that humans are different. With dawn, the gargoyles return to statue forms, while a mysterious hooded figure meets Hakon and plots to attack the castle the next day. Keith David is the voice of Goliath, whereas Clancy Brown is the voice of Hakon, and they both pack quite a punch. That night, the captain convinces Goliath to chase the Vikings away for good, and Goliath keeps Demona in charge. In the courtyard, the rest of the gargoyles are playing a game of catch with a piece of ham, while another one is busy gorging on food. When a child gets intrigued and approaches them, his mother comes to retrieve him and throws sticks at one of the gargoyles. Demona intervenes and the gargoyles try to scare the humans away. Goliath, an elderly gargoyle, later to be named Hudson, arrives at the commotion, and Goliath sends the 4 other gargoyles, Brooklyn, Lexington, Broadway, and Bronx, to the rookery. Afterward, Goliath and Hudson fly over to the forest and find tracks. However, it soon turns out to be a decoy, and they try to rush back to the castle. Unfortunately, the sun rises, bringing them back to stone while the Vikings charge into the castle. The bowstrings of the archers snap, and someone lets the Viking warriors in so that the princess, Magus, and the rest of the people can be captured. It's revealed that the captain of the guard is the one who betrayed the people to exact revenge for the princess's ill behavior. The captain's name was supposed to be Robert, as it was taken from Robbie. The castle raid doesn't go according to the captain's plans, as Hakon destroys the statues of the other gargoyles outside. As the sun sets, Goliath and Hudson return to the ruins, and Goliath cries aloud, picking up the stones from Demona's crumbled statue. With the ending of the first part of the 5-part plot, we can look forward to some retaliation. Reawakening, Part 2. The second part of the story starts with Goliath reeling with anger and sadness as Hudson realizes there's been a betrayal. The rest of the gargoyles come out of the rookery and are devastated, while Goliath swears revenge. Together, they fly out to find the Vikings and save the people. Bronx is a dog gargoyle who lacks wings and bark, so he follows on foot. Meanwhile, the Vikings are celebrating their wins, while the prisoners are desolate. Hakon and the captain tie Magus and the princess in a cave, and they discuss whether they should ask for ransom. Hakon even tears off one of the pages from Magus's book and burns it in the fire. Just then, they hear a roar as they notice the gargoyles approaching. Hakon and the captain take the princess hostage, leaving Magus alone, who tries to free himself by cutting the ropes and tying his wrist. The gargoyles free the prisoners from the Vikings, but Magus, thinking that the gargoyles are responsible for the princess's death, puts a spell on them. At this point, it seems most of the series is about getting meaningless revenge. However, this series has been credited as the source of Greg Weisman's fame as a showrunner, and considering the way the story loops the present with the medieval times, it is worth mentioning. Goliath notices Hakon and the captain run after the princess as they try to throw her off a cliff. Goliath is shocked by the captain's betrayal, and Hakon also falsely blames the captain for breaking the gargoyle statues, resulting in a mad scuffle between the two men. Their fight causes all 3 humans to trip and fall. While the men fall to their doom, Goliath saves the princess. The little boy who befriended the other gargoyles comes to them with news, and as Goliath and the princess rush back, they see that Magus has turned the rest of the gargoyles to stone, even at night. Magus is shocked to see the princess alive, and both the princess and Magus are apologetic towards Goliath. Goliath asks for a counterspell to reverse the magic, but Magus confesses that Hakon burned the page with the reverse spell. He also tells the princess that the spell will break when the castle rises above the clouds. Later, Goliath places all the statues in the castle and asks the princess and Magus to take care of their eggs in the rookery. Lastly, he urges Magus to redo the spell on him so that he can also be stone. In the original version, Magus was the one who suggested the offer, while a higher-up proposed the idea of Goliath making the request, which added more drama. In 1994, the castle is abandoned and in ruins when David Xanatos enters its premises and admires the statues. He orders his assistant, Owen Burnett, to shift the castle to New York. The castle is reassembled on top of a tall New York building. The scene featuring the construction workers relocating Castle Wyvern also features the power loader, which was first shown in a movie called Aliens. Goliath and his friends awaken as night and rain come since the castle is now above the clouds. However, they're shocked to see the surroundings, and Xanatos explains that it's been 1,000 years since they got cursed. As Xanatos describes how they can help each other, a group of armed men arrives at the castle in a chopper. The commandos attack Xanatos, and the gargoyles fight back to protect the castle. Greg Weisman makes a voice actor cameo as one of the commandos in this scene, as red flares from laser guns fill the sky. We're taken back to the opening scene from episode 1. Some commandos get past everyone inside the building to steal a briefcase. Xanatos fights back with a laser gun and attempts to stop the intruders from running away, fails as he's struck back. He's still thankful to the gargoyles and asks them to stay at the castle. Awakening Part 3. The third segment of the story continues with Detective Marza entering Xanatos' building and questioning Owen. The assistant lies that the issue was an exploding generator, but Elisa wouldn't buy into it. Elisa even threatens to bring more police if necessary. Xanatos tells her that the generator story is for the press and that he's already apologized to the mayor. Xanatos informs that rivals invaded the castle to steal his technologies. Meanwhile, the gargoyles create a mess in the kitchen, although Disney has partially cut the scene. As Owen informs Xanatos about the issue, Xanatos asks Owen to see Elisa out. Interestingly, Elisa sees Hudson moving, but Hudson handles the situation. After Owen leaves the elevator, Elisa comes back and sneaks into the castle as Bronx follows her. Elisa reaches the castle's rampart when she hears a sound and draws her gun. She's shocked to see the Bronx, and as Goliath also appears behind her, Elisa trips and falls over the ledge. Goliath rescues her and puts her on a ledge, but his ability to speak astonishes Elisa. She asks him to take them back to the castle, but Goliath explains that he can't fly, but glides on a strong wind which is currently absent. Well, that was quite awkward, but Goliath knows other tricks. For example, he claws into the building to climb with Elisa on his back. Once back in the castle, the rest of the gargoyles appear before her, and Elisa shows her card and explains that she's a detective. Goliath also shares their story with Elisa, and it looks like they'll be friends soon. Elisa further offers to show them the new world, and they decide to meet at another building the next night. After Elisa leaves, Goliath meets with Xanatos. The character design for Xanatos is based on the character's voice actor, Jonathan Frakes. Xanatos asks for Goliath's help in retrieving 3 stolen discs from the rival company called Cyberbotics. Xanatos helps Goliath understand by telling him that the discs are magical talismans with hundreds of spells. He further shows Goliath the 3 locations of an island in the bay, an underground research center, and a flying air fortress that holds the stolen data. Goliath takes it all in with some trepidation, fearing that such a complicated world may prove dangerous for his friends. After Goliath leaves, a shadow of a female gargoyle-like person appears, and Xanatos tells her everything is going as planned. As the sun rises, they go to sleep and again come alive the next night. The trio, comprising Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway, seek Goliath's permission to explore the city. Letting them go, Goliath visits Elisa, but Hudson also swoops in as he has difficulty trusting the humans. Since it's difficult to call the gargoyles without a name, Hudson finally names himself after the river that Elisa has just shown to them. Interestingly, Hudson is the only gargoyle who speaks in a Scottish accent, despite all of them hailing from Scotland. Seeing Goliath and Elisa get cozy with each other, Hudson returns to the castle while Goliath carries Elisa and flies over the city. Back at the castle, Hudson and Bronx explore the furnishings but get terrified by a rock singer's performance on TV. The other 3 gargoyles also have a mishap when Lexington unintentionally scares away a motorcycle rider, and when Lexington rides the motorcycle instead, crashes it into a wall. They decide to keep it a secret from Goliath. Goliath and Elisa also save a couple from a bunch of crooks, but the couple runs away in fear. Later, the two walk into the park but get ambushed by the same commandos, who weaken Goliath with a dart shot. As the episode ends on another cliffhanger, a sense of foreboding and another war is brewing in New York.
You're alive.
Goliath, my love.
Awakening, Part 4. The fourth part of the 5-part series begins at the park, where the commandos attempt to kill Goliath. The 5-part episode has also been released on VHS as Gargoyles the movie, The Heroes Awaken, perhaps making for more seamless storytelling. Elisa helps Goliath get free, and the duo runs away from their capturers. Elsewhere, Lexington, Broadway, and Brooklyn are tired of flying all night and try to hail a taxi, not realizing they're scary to humans. On the other hand, Hudson and Bronx are finally adjusted to watching television, and we get a glimpse of the iconic scene from The Lion King, where Rafiki lifts the newborn Simba. This could be both promotional and a tribute, as the episode and the movie came out in the same year. Hudson notices it's near dawn and comes out on the rooftop. The others also arrive, but all get worried as Goliath hasn't returned. Somewhere in a more natural region, an injured Goliath and Elisa take shelter under a bridge, and Elisa notices the darts and a transmitter on Goliath. Elisa places the transmitter on a stray dog and takes Goliath to a forested area. As the sun rises, Goliath turns to stone, startling Elisa. She runs away in another direction to lure the commandos. This scene with Elisa Marza hiding from the commandos and taking them down one by one is truly an outstanding animated sequence. This is probably why this series was Disney's most popular cartoon in that era. Elisa returns to Goliath and stays beside his statue as the day passes. After sunset, Goliath awakens and takes his leave to go back, but Elisa's efforts deeply move him. After Goliath returns, he calls Hudson by name, inspiring others to anoint a name to themselves. The names used by the Gargoyles are based on streets and places in New York. Xanatos calls Goliath and introduces him to an old friend, who's none other than Demona. Of course, it's quite understandable that there's some twist here. It's also easy to assume that Demona's silhouette was shown in the previous episode. As Demona and Goliath embrace in front of Xanatos, Demona explains that she followed Goliath that night 1,000 years back and lost her way. Later, she asked Magus to put a spell on her, and Xanatos eventually found her statue and brought her here. When Demona meets the other Gargoyles, everyone rejoices, and she tells Goliath that they should help Xanatos retrieve the discs as a token of gratitude for bringing them together. The Gargoyles go through the defenses of the 3 fortresses in Xanatos' office, and then Goliath divides teams to attack. A major coincidence for this series is that several cast members for the show have also voiced for the Star Trek series. Weissman also wanted Patrick Stewart to play Goliath, for which he wanted Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis to convince him, but later realized it'd be unfair to the actor. The chemistry between the actors still does wonders. As Hudson and Bronx head to the underground base, Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway go to the tower in the bay, while Goliath and Demona head toward the air fortress. They breach the air fortress, but some guards notice them and attack. Goliath is shocked to see Demona ferociously attack the guards, and even tries to kill them. At the tower, the 3 Gargoyles climb down the elevator shaft to 4 floors below, but are welcomed by several armed guards aiming their guns at them. To know what awaits Hudson and Bronx, we must head on to the last part of this story arc.
If you are not my ally, then you are my enemy.
Awakening, Part 5. The final segment of this story starts with Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway averting getting shot by the guards. They flee from the guards and break into a lab where they steal the hard disk. The 3 then escape by hurling a large piece of equipment at a window and breaking it. Hudson notices the security cameras in the underground center and hatches a plan. He lets the guards see him and capture him so that he can get inside the lab. Bronx then launches a sudden attack as Hudson is taken inside. Hudson steals the disc and runs away with Bronx, followed by the guards. They hitch a ride on the roof of a subway train, and once the train is out in the air, Hudson flies off with Bronx. At the air fortress, Goliath and Demona retrieve the disc, but Demona destroys the panels, making the air fortress crash into the river. She pulls away Goliath, who wants to help the humans, while Detective Elisa Marza watches the aircraft crash and the Gargoyles flying above. After delivering the discs to Xanatos, Goliath seeks time out to meet Elisa, but Demona won't let him, and the two argue. Goliath gets increasingly surprised by Demona's change of character and hatred of humankind. Such aspects provide the show with a dark undertone when, originally, the show was pitched to be a comedy. It intended to make Gargoyles a mischievous and troublemaker creature that drives humans mad, but the idea was abandoned, although the basic premises of the characters and plots were maintained. The original idea may have been fun, but we appreciate the somber storytelling as it adds unique elements to the plot. Likewise, things take a dark turn when Goliath ignores Demona and goes to meet Elisa while Demona plots revenge with Xanatos. Elisa tells Goliath that the transmitter put on him was from Xanatos Corporation, and the whole stealing from Xanatos was staged, as the businessman wanted the Gargoyles to steal valuable data from cyberbiotics. At the castle, Xanatos and Demona plan to use the stolen data to further their experiments. They send several robotic steel gargoyles that look like Goliath. This robot gargoyle attacks the living being gargoyles. Even Goliath comes back amidst the fight. The gargoyles destroy all the robots, but Xanatos and Demona now attack with a laser gun. Demona reveals that she was the one who made a deal with the captain of the guards 1,000 years back so that the gargoyles could regain their authority over the castle. As Goliath refuses to join her, Demona finally reveals her name and aims to kill him. Elisa appears at the last moment and pushes Demona, causing a misfire and hitting one of the turrets. A falling stone knocks Xanatos unconscious, while Demona and Elisa also start dropping. Goliath saves Elisa, but it's too late to save Demona. He yells in anguish and picks up Xanatos, who's gained consciousness. Elisa and Hudson stop Goliath from repeating Demona's mistakes. As Xanatos is taken into custody, the gargoyles relax and prepare for their daytime nap. Demona's survival remains a question, but the gargoyles and Elisa remain hopeful for an exciting life in this century. The thrill of the hunt. It's been some time since the events of the last episode, and the night begins with Elisa being escorted into the eerie building by Xanatos' assistant, Owen. Owen says that Xanatos doesn't hold a grudge, and as the sun sets, our Manhattan clan of gargoyles wakes up. But everyone except Goliath leaves to watch television. Now that Xanatos will be back from prison, Elisa requests Goliath to take his clan to a new home, as they're no longer safe in the eerie building. Goliath, with his 10th century beliefs, thinks that the castle is theirs, as they've defeated Xanatos and doesn't have a clue about legal affairs or modern real estate. He ignores Elisa's advice and refuses to leave. Inside the castle, Hudson finds that all the TV channels are only showing an action TV show called The Pack. Oddly, this has also happened before. As the other three gargoyles also come to watch the show, they see an announcement of the Pack cast making a public appearance at Madison Square Garden. The gargoyles believe that the Pack are real warriors like them and have become quite the fanboys. Meanwhile, the Pack members named Fox, Wolf, Dingo, Hyena, and Jackal train at the studio when they receive several images of Goliath from an anonymous person. Despite the gang's name, it's common knowledge that a fox never travels in the Pack, and is the only animal named in the gang to do so. Later, the Pack fights their TV show foes, the evil ninjas, on stage to entertain the masses, while Brooklyn, Broadway, and Lexington watch from the rafters. Further intrigued by them, Lexington stays back to secretly meet the actors. When Lexington approaches the Pack, they first get startled, but Fox and Wolf inquire about Goliath and seek to meet him. Lexington returns home just before dawn and considers the Pack as their ally, but Goliath is distrustful. The arguments continue after sunset, and Goliath finally agrees to meet the Pack with Lexington. Upon arriving at the studio, they find it dark, but soon a particularly bright light shines upon them. Goliath realizes it's a trap, and as the Pack hunts the gargoyles, Lexington frowns at being betrayed by his new friends. Once Lexington and Goliath fall into the street, the Pack approaches to kill them, but commoners think that a shooting is going on. Two kids, Billy and Susan, further help the Pack, thinking the gargoyles are the villain, and Lexington growls at them when the kids hurl things at him. Goliath and Lex escape onto another rooftop with several gargoyle statues, making it difficult for the Pack to spot them. This part resembles Gaston trying to find the beast among the gargoyles in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Goliath and Lexington get rid of several Pack members until only Fox and Wolf are left. The ensuing fight again takes them back to the street. Wolf enjoys fighting with Goliath but loses to him, and the gargoyles leave the defeated humans to the police as they make way for the castle. Surprisingly, Fox's voice actress Laura San Giacomo was never credited in the list, as her agent felt that voice acting in an animated series could end her career. Lex promises never to trust humans at the castle, but others console him. Before turning back to Stone, Goliath ponders on finding real allies in this new world. At the prison, Owen informs Xanatos that all of the plans worked, but the gargoyles still survived. As one might have guessed, the Pack appearing on every channel was a tactic employed by Xanatos. Xanatos is also the most optimistic villain in the fantasy world, as he finds some benefits from the outcome. Temptation. The scene opens on Lexington working on a motorcycle with Brooklyn and Broadway waiting impatiently. As Lex finishes the bike, Brooklyn makes an impromptu helmet from a can and wraps his wings around his body like clothes. He also wears a black jacket and sunglasses to look like a biker before riding into the night. Brooklyn speeds past a police patrol car, which stops pursuing him when they get a look at the rule breaker. Brooklyn also sees a biker gang pass by and attempts to join them, but the humans call him a monster and attack. Brooklyn riding the ripping rider cycle from the Kenner toy line was an instance of the toy company forcing the higher-ups to promote a new line of action figures. However, the producers were not very keen on the idea. That's perhaps why Brooklyn's beloved motorcycle ultimately blows up due to the attacks of the motorcycle gang. Brooklyn still manages to look cool and full of swag with his appearance. The leader even shoots at Brooklyn, but another mysterious gargoyle saves him. After reaching safety, Demona reveals herself to Brooklyn. She tries to explain how humans had made her life worse, and it's clear that she wasn't cursed like the other gargoyles. Back at the castle, others are in the TV room, and Broadway informs them about Brooklyn joyriding. Demona continues to manipulate Brooklyn against humans and takes him to see all the human atrocities happening in the city. Demona convinces him that Goliath's views must be changed. She asks Brooklyn to bring the Grimorum Arcanum, the book of spells that can help Goliath see. Brooklyn returns to the castle and shows less enthusiasm. Elisa also returns and informs them that Xanatos will soon be released, so they must find another home. But Goliath ignores her again. The next night, Brooklyn steals the Grimorum and takes it to the cloisters, where Demona awaits him. Demona then asks him to bring in Goliath. Brooklyn does as he's told and tells Goliath that the cloisters have a beautiful medieval-style architecture that'd interest him. But as soon as the gullible gargoyles reach the place, Demona casts a spell on Goliath, putting him under her control. Unlike the other times when Goliath's eyes glow white, this time they glow green. Likewise, Demona's eyes consistently glow red, like a demon. Brooklyn gets upset at the betrayal and tries to strangle Demona as she orders Goliath to restrain Brooklyn. This episode is the second one that features one of the trio members developing severe hatred for the episode's antagonist due to their betrayal. Just like the pack, Duke Lexington, the same happens with Brooklyn. Brooklyn hides from Demona and tries to speak to Goliath alone, who won't snap back. Demona tells him that only the one holding the spells can order Goliath. This provokes Brooklyn to snatch the Grimorum from Demona. Brooklyn successfully tears off the pages with the spell, and as Demona flies away with the book, he orders Goliath to capture her. On her way, Demona tears off more pages from the book and throws it into a lake before flying away. Brooklyn saves the book from getting drowned and then returns home with Goliath. As everyone discusses what to do with Goliath, Elisa takes a chance. She holds the pages with the spell and orders Goliath to act as he would if he'd never been under a spell. The tactics bring Goliath back to himself, but as the sunrise approaches, Lex asks Brooklyn about the motorcycle, and the news of its demise freezes him into a shocked state.
Be sure that no more of these fall into the wrong hands. Wait!
Deadly Force. It's the last of the episodes focusing on one of the trios, and it begins with some hoodlums hijacking a truck full of shipping crates from a dockyard. Owen Burnett has been supervising the unloading of the crates and tries to stop the men, but they get away. As the group escapes, the leader opens his gas mask and laughs at their success. Back at the castle, Sunset wakes the gargoyles, and Broadway leaves immediately to catch a movie called Showdown. Hudson comments that between movies, shows, and games, it's difficult to realize what's reality. This might reflect on the pack, which the gargoyles thought was real. Broadway goes to the theater, sneaks in through the roof, finds several popcorn packets. He enjoys it as he watches the Wild West-themed movie with considerable gun violence. At the 23rd Precinct, Elisa discusses the issue of the dockyard with her superior, Maria Chavez, when Owen enters, informing that 322 laser guns from Xanatos Enterprise were in the shipping crate. Elisa was originally surnamed Chavez, but it changed when her race changed from African American and Latina to African American and Native American, as her appearance was similar to that of her voice actress Sally Richardson Whitfield. Elisa confronts Tony Dracan, an organized crime figure she thinks is responsible. As Tony is shown, Elisa's speculations are proven true, but Tony mocks Elisa upon confrontation and leaves with his men. Elisa returns home to her cat and starts cooking when Broadway visits her. It appears somewhere in between the last few episodes the gargoyles have learned of her address. Broadway notices Elisa's gun hanging from the holster and starts playing with it. But unfortunately, an accidental shot hits Elisa. A panic-stricken Broadway picks her up and places her in front of an ambulance outside a hospital. However, he doesn't return home in time, leaving others worried. At the same moment, Owen appears with news of Elisa being shot as Goliath freezes with first light. Dracan and his men test the stolen guns when they hear about Elisa and make snide remarks. They decide to sell the weapons to a new buyer that night. Meanwhile, Elisa is fighting with life and death as the doctors operate on her at Manhattan General. In the evening, Goliath and the others seek more information from Owen, and Goliath sends Brooklyn and Lex to find Broadway while he goes to check up on Elisa. Broadway is distraught with guilt and weeps on a rooftop, while Goliath lies on the roof of Elisa's hospital room. He sees the doctor speak to Elisa's family about her dire condition. Captain Chavez also comes and tells them that it's probably Dracon and his men who shot Elisa. Being centered around gun safety made this episode the most controversial of the series. Toon Disney even refused to air it, and the ban was only lifted in 2002, albeit with edits. Although this isn't the first time such a theme was explored, the moral guardians and television advisory groups were forced to pull the episode from some markets. Goliath looks for Dracon while Broadway stops a mugger with a gun. He learns of a man called Glasses selling the new guns near the docks and flies off. Elisa's condition worsens momentarily, but the doctors pull her back. Goliath goes to the dockyards to finish Elisa's job and meets Broadway there. However, when Goliath assumes Dracon to have shot Elisa, Broadway doesn't immediately come clear. Together, they fight off Dracon and his men, but when Goliath is about to finish off Dracon, Broadway confesses. When Owen enters as the mystery buyer, Goliath ties Dracon and his cronies with iron bars. Owen congratulates the Gargoyles for retrieving the stolen weapon, but he may have spoken too soon, as Goliath uses one gun to destroy all the others. He breaks the gun and places it beside the tied criminals as evidence for the police. This explains why Broadway always disarms his enemies and has a hatred for guns. Elisa also wakes up and sees her mom, dad and brother around her, who inform her about Dracon being caught. As they leave, Goliath and Broadway enter. Broadway apologizes, but Elisa wisely says it was also her fault for not keeping the gun safely and out of reach. As the day comes, the two gargoyles stay frozen outside her window as guards. Enter McBeth. Life has become normal for the Gargoyles in the eerie building. Broadway is busy cooking. Hudson and Bronx are watching Disney's Quack Pack, 1996. Brooklyn and Lexington are playing cards, and Goliath is reading. Owen keeps monitoring them while Xanatos spends his remaining days in custody leisurely. Owen visits him and asks what they should do about the Gargoyles when a mysterious man enters the room. He introduces himself as McBeth and offers to bring the Gargoyles to his own home. McBeth goes to the castle and tells the Gargoyles to go with him, but Goliath refuses. Elisa also arrives with two crutches as she's still recovering from the gunshot wound. McBeth uses force to capture the Gargoyles. The Gargoyles fight back, but McBeth uses gas to distract them and manages to capture Brooklyn, Lexington and Bronx by trapping them in electrified nets and hauling them to his own mansion with a helicopter. When Goliath refuses to hear out Elisa's plans to find a new home, she seeks the help of Hudson and Broadway. At McBeth's mansion, there's artwork that resembles Demona, which gives off a feeling that there's more to his story. In the dungeons, the Gargoyles are locked in a cage. Brooklyn and Lexington recall Goliath speaking about a new writer, Shakespeare, who wrote about McBeth. However, McBeth in this series is not a reference to Shakespeare, but a historical one. This is mentioned in the comic book when McBeth and Arthur share their feelings about historical accuracy. Elisa, Broadway and Hudson return to the castle to get the Grimorum, but Owen stops them and brandishes a gun. Broadway destroys the gun. The Gargoyles leave with Elisa and the book. In Macbeth's dungeon, Brooklyn tests the electrified iron bars of the cage, and together with Lexington, they pull the charge from their cage so that Bronx can claw out of his own. Bronx goes onto the streets to find help when Goliath notices him. Bronx brings Goliath to Macbeth's home, where Goliath has to not only chase after Macbeth and avoid getting captured, but also go through various contraptions and even mirror mazes. He questions Macbeth about his purpose, and the older fellow replies that he wants the Gargoyle Queen Demona. Macbeth also reveals that he's the one who gave her the name. An interesting fact about this episode is that it's the only one that got animated by the Wang Film Productions, but there were no prominent inconsistencies except for the fact that if Macbeth knew Demona so well, he should have known that gargoyles don't have a queen. Macbeth proclaims that if he holds all the gargoyles hostage, Demona will come to rescue them, which makes Goliath laugh as he retorts that Demona is their foe. An angry Macbeth still fights back and accidentally sets the mansion on fire. Bronx also frees Lexington and Brooklyn by biting through the cage. It seems Bronx is strong enough to withstand the electric charge. While Macbeth flies away in his private aircraft, the Gargoyles fly back home. They're stopped by Hudson and Broadway, who are waiting atop a clock tower with Elisa. Hudson convinces Goliath that home is where family is, but Goliath takes a minute and flies back to the castle to inform Owen that they're leaving and will be back to claim their castle. If you think Xanatos is the weirdly calm villain, Owen is his perfect minion, as he indifferently sweeps the broken glass from the Grimorium's case and agrees to deliver Goliath's message. As Elisa explains how they could finish their new home, Lexington decides to make the clock run again. Finally, as Xanatos returns from jail, new challenges await the Gargoyles. The Edge. Xanatos is back and practices martial arts with Owen. He's a graceful loser when Owen beats him. The Gargoyles have also adjusted to their new home, the attic of a clock tower. It still benefits them that the clock tower is above the precinct, and Elisa brings a TV for them. Captain Chavez introduces Elisa to her new partner, Matt Bluestone, who helped her with the Drakon case. Elisa doesn't want to work with a partner, but a recent accident has influenced the captain's decision. It becomes more difficult for Elisa to work with Matt, as he's a conspiracy theorist who believes in the Illuminati. Later, at night, Elisa brings the TV to the Gargoyles, who appreciate her efforts. Elisa further finds Goliath reading Dostoevsky. A news broadcast showing Xanatos donating the Eye of Odin artifact to the Museum of Modern Art further enrages Goliath, and he moves out. Soon after, a mysterious gargoyle with features like Goliath breaks into the museum and steals the artifact. Elisa and Matt arrive, and Matt shoots at the gargoyle despite Elisa trying to stop him. However, she's surprised when the shot hits on a metallic body. The scene in the museum features a shout-out to the artwork The Scream, which is featured on the walls. As the silhouette of a gargoyle stealing makes the news, the Manhattan Clan and Elisa feel that somebody must be impersonating the Gargoyles to tarnish their non-existent reputation. Goliath assumes it must be one of the steel gargoyles that Xanatos had once built and used to overthrow the real ones. Goliath orders Hudson and Bronx to guard the clock tower and goes out to face Xanatos. But Xanatos asks Goliath and the other gargoyles to stay at his research lab. Elisa also follows them in her car, and Matt insists on joining. However, Owen denies them any entry without a search warrant. As an exasperated Goliath leaves, the rest of the gargoyles follow him. They're ambushed by the Steel Clan mid-air, which now has a leader in a red suit. A fight ensues between the Steel Clan and the Manhattan Clan as the public watches the gargoyles fight along with laser lights. But when the Manhattan Clan regroups on a rooftop, the Steel Clan waits without doing anything. Goliath realizes that the Steel Clan wants to find their new abode so that Xanatos can completely dominate them. Goliath and his group lure the Steel Clan atop the Statue of Liberty, where another battle occurs. Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway finish off the two Steel Gargoyles, while Goliath fights the red-suited leader. When the two Steel Gargoyles are destroyed, the red-suited leader gets cornered and retreats. The discovery of the Steel Gargoyles helps the real Gargoyles to hide again. But things are not that simple, as the red-suited leader is Xanatos himself, who had been experimenting with a prototype exosuit for himself that lets him fight at gargoyle level. In what today is known as Xanatos Gambit, the namesake villain perseveres with little gain, although much of his plan goes in vain. This popular trope name was inspired by David Xanatos. Moreover, just like the episode's title, Xanatos believes he hasn't lost his edge.
I'll make it quick, old soldier.
Long way to morning. In 984 AD, Scotland, Prince Malcolm scares his daughter, Princess Catherine, about the gargoyles to make her sleep. As he steps out of her room to discuss the banishment of his previous advisor, the Archmage, with Hudson, he gets shot with a poisoned dart by the banished Archmage. Catherine, not realizing the truth, blames Hudson for it. This scene in particular shows how the princess misunderstood and hated the gargoyles. In the present, Demona breaks into Elisa's studio apartment, shoots her with a similar poisoned dart, and asks her to tell Goliath to meet. Unbeknownst to Demona, Elisa's police badge saves her from the dart, but Goliath leaves with Hudson when she relays the story to the gargoyles. Demona tries to kill the two with her laser gun and even injures Goliath. Hudson is again taken back to a flashback of when Prince Malcolm was extremely ill due to the poison, and the then young Magus sought the Grimorum for the counterspell. Although the princess hates Hudson, the ailing prince feels sorry and considers the gargoyles his friends. In the past, Hudson orders Goliath and Demona to find the Archmage and the spellbook, but Demona wonders if Hudson is still good for leadership. In the present, Hudson tries his best to protect Goliath until the sun rises so that the petrification can heal him. Hudson drags Goliath through a water tunnel as Demona pursues them. Demona proclaims to spare Hudson's life if he swears allegiance to Demona and considers herself the new leader. Similarly, in the past, Demona implores Goliath to replace Hudson as the leader, as Goliath is younger and stronger. Goliath refuses, but Hudson overhears the conversation. The flashback alternates between the past and present as Hudson reminds Goliath how they survived while combating the Archmage. In the past, Hudson leads his team through mountains and finally finds the Archmage with the Grimorum. As they fight the evil sorcerer, a magical shot hurts Hudson. Goliath succeeds in seizing the spellbook, but the Archmage falls into a trench while trying to get the book. Hudson regains consciousness, but now sports a nasty scar on his right eye, his trademark feature from the first episode. Hudson was originally named Ralph Fullmoon, and he was supposed to be married to a female gargoyle named Alice. The character was also considered to be comically unlucky, as everything he did would backfire, but it was later changed to an aged couch potato with a more aggravating backstory. In the present, Hudson takes Goliath to a cemetery and helps him hide as he steps outside to fight Demona. Goliath watches in agony as his older mentor fights the villain. The fight sequence is interesting, especially how Hudson fights with a sword and Demona with a laser gun. Ultimately, experience beats brute strength as the sun rises, turning the three gargoyles into stone. Back in the past, the Magus creates an antidote with the Grimorium's help, which helps Prince Malcolm recover. However, Hudson steps down, forcing Goliath to be the new leader of Gargoyles. Goliath remarks that since Hudson's strategy helped them, the older mentor should stay to guide them. Hudson's strategy also works in the present, as being turned to stone has helped Goliath recover and defeat Demona. As the demonic gargoyle flies away, she snarks that they've forgotten to save Elisa. Goliath and Hudson keep Elisa's safety and well-being a secret, but this would definitely be a hard truth to conceal. Her brother's keeper. The episode starts with Elisa and her brother Derek flying a chopper, following Xanatos' limousine, driven by Owen. Xanatos and Owen are aware they're being followed and enter a party for diamond exchange. Meanwhile, Lexington is playing a simulation game of flying an aircraft and not allowing anyone else to play. Goliath asks them to stop bickering, and Broadway shares his concern about Elisa flying. Back at the party, two surprise guests are brother-sister duo Hyena and Jackal from the pack. Their praying eyes fall upon the spectacular Coyote Diamond, but before they can steal it, Xanatos buys it. This diamond appears only once in the series, but foreshadows many events. It's since also appeared in the comics. The duo makes a scene at the party and snatches the diamond, and Xanatos orders Owen to inform the police. Luckily, Derek and Elisa intercept Jackal and Hyena before they flee. As Jackal aims his gun at the police chopper, Xanatos pushes him. The pack members still get away, while Xanatos offers Derek a job to pilot his own aircraft. When Elisa tells Derek not to take the job, he misunderstands her and argues. Elisa shares her problems with the Gargoyles, who advise her to talk to her brother. Elisa also speaks with her dad, who supports her views, but Mrs. Marza supports Derek's choice to leave the Force and work for Xanatos. So, when Elisa again tries to talk with Derek, he completely disregards her. The episode's title is, of course, a play on the two different brother-sister equations shown in this story, but it also references Genesis 4:9 and the story of Abel and Cain. Elisa now seeks the Gargoyles' help to prove Xanatos' evil nature to her brother. Once Derek and Xanatos fly out of the eerie building, Jackal and Hyena attack them from their chopper. Brooklyn, Lex, and Broadway jump on the pack's helicopter and throw Hyena and Jackal out, who escape on individual parachutes. However, it's now up to Lex to make a safe landing, and his training from the simulation helps a little. Brooklyn quips that Lex must use the Force, which is a quick reference to Star Wars. He also mentions the Starfleet while teasing Lex, which is another reference to Star Trek. The trio somehow lands their helicopter in an alley without hurting anybody or causing severe damage. Lex decides to repair the helicopter, while Goliath promises to be on watch the next time Derek flies with Xanatos. Elisa also visits Fox in prison, who reveals that Xanatos is the one who secretly formed the pack, but Jackal and Hyena are unaware of it. So, the whole coup about killing Xanatos is actually orchestrated by Xanatos himself, so that he could get Elisa's brother. As Fox reveals the details, she seems enamored by Xanatos. However, Elisa has recorded the conversation secretly and plans to play it for her brother. Right then, Goliath informs her that Xanatos and Derek are flying to Xanatos' other house. The trio of Gargoyles, Goliath and Elisa, fly out in their repaired and remodeled helicopter, like in the motorcycle case. Higher-ups who wanted to sell toys mandated the Gargoyles ride their helicopter. We're glad this didn't work out, as even if it's fun, the concept just doesn't make sense. Xanatos and Derek walk through a forested area towards his private villa when they're again attacked by Hyena and Jackal. Before Derek can save Xanatos, the Gargoyles arrive and defeat Hyena and Jackal. The helicopter doesn't make it, which is probably a blessing in disguise. Afterward, Xanatos leaves Derek and Elisa to chat, who's surprised that Derek is aware of Gargoyles. Derek says that Xanatos had shown him videos of the Gargoyles and also confessed to his mistakes. It's clear that Xanatos is playing a bigger game. As Derek and Elisa again argue, Goliath stops them and tells them how lucky they are to have a family. Elisa eventually leaves her brother to make his own decisions, but hands him the tape with Fox's revelation. The episode ends with snowfall in New York, as the snow covers the stone statues of the Gargoyles atop the clock tower. However, we never see Derek listening to the recording. Reawakening. This is the last episode of the season, and it starts with a store getting robbed, but it appears that the store owner is used to such affairs. A flashback from Scotland in 994 AD takes us back to the ill-fated day Goliath and Hudson left to track the Vikings. This time, another male gargoyle is shown who was previously not featured in Awakening parts 1 to 5. Goliath asks Demona and this new gargoyle to guard the castle as he leaves. At present, it's a snowy night in New York, and Elisa visits the gargoyles before work. When she speaks about her duty to protect and serve the people as part of the police clan, it interests Goliath, who wants to follow her. Elsewhere, Demona and Xanatos combine sorcery and science to bring to life the new rockery gargoyle, who's now named Cold Stone. As Coldstone reawakens, Xanatos rejoices by shouting, "It's alive!" referring to Frankenstein, 1931. This scene is iconic in two ways. Firstly, the experiment is much like the way Frankenstein monster was born, and secondly, it features 3 ex-Star Trek actors who even portrayed a love triangle in Star Trek The Next Generation. Coldstone wakes up with one glowing eye and cyborg-like features as Demona manipulates him against Goliath. Moreover, she introduces Xanatos as her servant. Surely tripping on misguided delusions, Matt and Elisa arrive at the shop where the store owner was robbed at the beginning of the episode. Matt sounds frustrated as the shop has been robbed thrice. As he goes inside, Elisa connects with Goliath through a comlink. Elisa soon gets an alert from Times Square and heads there with Matt. There's a fire hydrant burst in Times Square, and of course, Coldstone is rampaging the area. Elisa and Matt make their way through the police cars and shoot the silhouette of Coldstone, but the bullet ricochets off. As Coldstone aims to throw a car at the detectives, Goliath appears and saves them. Coldstone calls Goliath a betrayer and fights him. The sounds of destruction also alert the trio, who are watching Bambi in a nearby movie theater. They too arrive to stop Coldstone, and if this isn't enough, Demona, Xanatos in his exosuit, and another robot gargoyle make a public appearance. Despite Xanatos' prohibitions, Demona orders Coldstone to kill the Manhattan clan. Goliath asks him to stop the killing, which further confuses Coldstone. They finally decide to take the fight somewhere more private with less prying eyes. All those who have religiously followed the show must have found several similarities to Batman the Animated Series. Gargoyles was Disney's answer to the Warner Brothers cult animated show. Gargoyles has therefore not only used the same stuff in multiple points, but also the Night Crusader and Gothic structures are similar. However, unlike Gotham, this story takes place in the very real world of New York and features well-known monuments. For instance, the pack reconvenes on the Brooklyn Bridge, and during the fight, Xanatos lifts his mask, revealing that he's inside the exosuit. Lex lures the other steel gargoyle into a trap and destroys it. Goliath and Coldstone fall into the water, but Coldstone has a change of heart at the last moment and comes up with Goliath. Demona still tries to kill them and shoots, but Coldstone takes the bullet and again falls into the river. Hudson and Bronx also appear after having watched the news. However, Goliath couldn't find Coldstone, and Xanatos escapes with Demona. Goliath finally realizes that the clock tower is merely a place to sleep, but New York is now their home and must be protected. As a last bit of bravery, the gargoyles threaten the mugger to return everything to the store owner who used to get robbed. The mugger asks the owner to call the police while the stone gargoyles watch from a rooftop. As we conclude the first chapter of this cult classic, there's no denying that this series was a stellar act, and we'd request you to stay tuned for the upcoming seasons of the show that we'll cover soon. The series not only influenced the more exquisitely designed animated series of the future, but instilled ideas and plots that are relatable even today. But before you move on to watching the next seasons, why don't you let us know in the comments below what the high and low points were for you in the first season?